So today we are looking at the next detachment for the orcs, one which, as I've said, I think is possibly the best overall. It just brings you such a strong buff to your army, and the Bully Boyz detachment is all focused around knobs, meganobs, and war bosses. So whilst we saw that knobs are great in the Cult of Speed, meganobs are great in the Green Tide, both units do also get some enormous benefits from this detachment, and in fact the unit we are going to be looking at today in this video is the meganobs, in particular the meganobs with a rather nice attached character. The Bully Boyz detachment swaps out things like the constant sustained hits in melee from something like the Warhorde detachment for a more focused short-term bonus, but one which can, in the right situation, propel your army to 2 battle rounds of just pure unadulterated destruction. It allows you, as long as there is a war boss keyword model on the battlefield or in a transport on the battlefield, to call a second war. Now, the war is a huge part of what makes orcs so good. It gives you not only a mobility boost with advance and charge, it gives you a damage boost with +1 strength and attacks, and also a durability boost with that 5-up invuln. So it is genuinely such a strong rule, and it is balanced around the fact that it only gets you this one use, one turn, enormous like all-in-one battle round of destruction that you really need to try and leverage as much as possible to get the most damage done before it trails off and you are left essentially without an army rule for the rest of the battle. So you've always had to be really thoughtful about when you were going to call it to get the most out of it. But now, being able to call it twice in this detachment gives you so much more scope. You don't have to worry as much about using it maybe earlier than you wanted to if you really need that 5-up invuln protection. You know you aren't necessarily going to be wasting the entirety of that advance and charge if you have a few key units that you really need to get the invuln, but aren't going to be able to get a charge in to benefit from that bonus. Or if you know that you've got a good round of melee off, but you need to follow it up with even more strength and more attacks to finish them off, you've got that second war in your back pocket to put even more pressure onto the enemy for a couple of turns. And then just in terms of like the psychological game, it means your opponent is going to have to worry about the fact that they know your entire army is potentially going to have 2 turns of advancing and charging with a load of extra strength and attacks. So you have got a massively bigger threat radius to your army than you would with just the 1 turn of war. Now, the detachment rule, the boss is watching, it does only let this second war affect knobs, meganobs, and war boss keyword units. But to be fair, a lot of things in this new codex did get the war boss keyword added to them. So in addition to your regular war bosses, your beast bosses on squigosaurs, your death killer war trikes, even Gars himself now all have it. So any units that those models join will also get the benefit of your second war. So it really can be an army-wide buff. It isn't just knobs and meganobs. You can get this on bikers with your Death Killer War Trike. You can get it on Squighog Boys with your Beast Boss on Squigosaur. You can even get it on regular boys and Beast Snagger Boys as long as they are joined by a War Boss or a Beast Boss. So there is quite an easy way to get this pretty much army-wide, if not completely army-wide, depending on how you build your army. But as for the unit we're looking at today, a unit which I think is a must-take if you are running this detachment, as I said, once again, we are looking at one of the better datasheets overall in the codex, and that is the meganobs. As we mentioned in the previous video about them, these guys are incredibly good. They are tanky with toughness 6 and 3 wounds. They've got that 2-up save, although worth noting they won't get the reroll 1s that they get from the Green Tide detachment, but 2 turns of war in exchange grants them that 5-up invuln for 2 battle rounds, which really does help when they don't have one natively. And then of course they get that really strong 4+ feel no pain when they're in a war. So you can in this detachment have 2 full battle rounds of 2-up armor, 5-up invuln, and a 4+ feel no pain, which in some situations those 2 turns alone could be enough to win you the battle just off the back of them. Instead of a mech joining the unit like we did in the Green Tide, it is going to be a war boss this time, mainly because one of the important interactions with the detachment enhancements is that it can only go on a war boss, and the one in particular we're looking at is only on a war boss in Mega Armor. So the war boss in Mega Armor, these guys got a slight change. They still look to be 80 points as per the latest field manual, and they do have a rather terrifying melee profile with 4 strength 12, -2 AP, 2 damage swings that jump to 3 damage in a war. So they do add a lot of damage themselves to the MEGANOBZ squad, but then of course they get even more useful for them in a few other ways. MEGANOBZ will be taking damage for the war boss in Mega Armor, so that keeps him safe, and of course in a war they get that 4-up Feel No Pain. It does say, I think anyway, in their datasheet, the 4-up Feel No Pain is for models in the unit, so although they are going to be tanking the wounds first against any precision shots, the Mega Boss will also get that Feel No Pain just to keep him safe in case anything is trying to take him out with like snipers or whatever. But on top of that, in terms of giving more to the MEGANOBZ, he also gives them +1 to hit, which is great for them because they have a base 4+. So this really will make a big difference in all of their claw and saw attacks, especially on a war turn. And when you have called a war, the war boss in Mega Armor and the 6 MEGANOBZ, they come to, at the moment anyway, at 260 points, so they're not too expensive. And when they charge in, they can expect to do just over 23 wounds to a toughness 12 knight profile, so they can reliably one-shot a Questoris knight in melee without too much trouble, so they are very, very, very scary for their points cost. The big issue, of course, is how to get them there. With their somewhat slow 5-inch move, even with an advance and charge, it does seem like they are going to struggle to get into combat. And that's where the next part of this combo comes in. One of the enhancements in the Bully Boyz detachment, which is, as I said, is war boss in Mega Armor only, is the much loved, always useful teleporter. Now this is 25 points, so it brings the squad up to 285 points in total at the moment, but it is so useful on them. It gives the unit deep strike, so not only can they now start off the board and come in on one of your movement phases where you need them the most, but even more crucially, they now have the option to rapid ingress. And what that means is you can now bring this squad on at the end of your opponent's movement phase at 9 inch away, and you can either duck them behind cover to avoid any shooting, because obviously your opponent will get their shooting phase, or if you have called a war this battle round from another war boss on the table, you could quite feasibly drop them in a slightly more exposed position if you want to get the best angle on an enemy unit, possible, because in a war with that 2-up save, 5-up invuln and 4-up Feel No Pain, as long as you aren't exposing them to like an entire army's worth of shooting, they can take a few pot shots from a few squads and they are unlikely to lose more than one model from it, so you can be quite aggressive in where you rapid ingress them, but if you do want to be as safe as possible, you can just put them outside of line of sight behind some ruins or whatever, and then in your subsequent turn you can be in the war, or you can call it if it's a new battle round, and then you can move up 5 inches, advance to D6, and then still get off a charge. And you should reliably be able to get into pretty much any target as long as you've been able to rapid ingress that 9 inches away. It gives you, even if you roll a 1 on your advance, a 3-inch charge to make, which really isn't that difficult. And it essentially means that this unit can be a really serious threat to any big unit the enemy may have. Adding that deep strike ability to them just makes them so dangerous with the rapid ingress stratagem, and it does basically mean nothing in the enemy's army is potentially going to be safe from them getting into melee. If you want to make them even more devastating, of course, there are some stratagems in this detachment too. These can only be used on nobs or meganobs, but there are some very, very good ones as long as you have the CP for them. Armed to the Teeth gives you reroll hit rolls of 1 or full rerolls if you are in a war. Obviously, you want this on your meganobs when you've charged in on a war turn. This turns their 23 damage into a knight profile into an even more terrifying 29 damage. That means they can now reliably and easily take out even the bigger Dominus pattern knights in a single round of combat. It does also affect shooting, but I mean, you likely won't be using it there. Your meganobs are probably going to have dual kill swords anyway, so won't have any. but I just think you're going to want to use this on melee and really get the most out of that combat potential from them to kill the big stuff that they're charging into. Too Arrogant to Die is a really handy fight on death strat. It only goes off on a 5+, but it's on a 3+ in a war. So again, if you've been charged or you've got into a fight with something that maybe has fights first or your opponent interrupts, you can now pop this to at least get some damage back into the enemy when any of your meganobs die. I mean, with how hard meganobs are to kill, especially in a war, there might only be a couple of them getting killed off, but it does mean that if you say charge into the lion and he manages to kill 2 or 3 of them with his fights first and fairly good melee profile, you could on average be getting 1 or 2 to swing back before you remove them, and then they can take off a couple of wounds in return before the rest of your squad swings, so those 2 that do die aren't completely wasted. I also personally really like Hulking Brutes, which is basically Armor of Contempt for your orcs. It's only against shooting, but you worsen the AP of any attacks against them by 1. So again, if you do Rapid Ingress this unit and have to put them a bit more exposed than you would like to, you could in theory spend this to make it extremely unlikely that any of your meganobs will die. Anything AP 1 or 2 will just become much less effective into them. So if you are in, line of sight for some intercessors, by necessity, if you want to get a charge off something that's big and scary, the intercessors are just kind of in a position where you can't get out of their line of sight, you could potentially pop this and it will roughly half the damage that they're doing into you. Again, this is going to be one you have to weigh up because you're probably not going to lose a meganob anyway to 10 intercessors firing into you. So do you want to kind of spend the CP on that when you could potentially save it for a charge reroll? It would kind of be up to you, but this could in theory save you a meganob from dying if you do get exposed to a bit more shooting than you may like. The meganobs just in general are really, really good in the new book. They have got such a strong data sheet, which just makes them great in almost any of the detachments. But this combo in particular, with the war boss giving them deep strike and rapid ingress, 2 turns of the warg, which really helps them not only with their damage output, but also gives them a in-run and the 4-up Feel No Pain for 2 whole battle rounds. It just makes them so strong in this detachment. The big issue for me is that this combo is going to be very command point heavy. Rapid Ingress is something you're going to want to use. Any rerolls you may use for charges to get in, Hulking Brutes to survive a turn of shooting maybe, and then Armed to the Teeth is going to be almost mandatory to leverage just the most amount of melee power from them when they're going into tough enemies. So it is going to add up over the course of the game. I definitely think that adding some grots to farm CP is going to be quite a key part of this detachment. But if you can fund it all with your available command points, a unit of 6 meganobs and an attached war boss in mega armor is going to be disgustingly durable, really hard hitting, and a relatively cheap unit that you can just drop straight into the enemy's backfield and basically be this unstoppable, really far-ranging menace for at least 2 whole battle rounds, by which time the game may very well already be in your hands. And that is going to be it for the Bully Boyz combo. More meganobs, more teleporting, more brutal melee output, and more unbelievably strong Feel No Pain. But as always, what do you make of this combo? And will it be seeing any play in your Bully Boyz lists? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.